T-Mobile says the time is now 6:39, and tonight's meeting of the Development Review Board has been called to order. The DRB is a quasi-judicial volunteer resident board that upholds standards and procedures as defined in the Winooski zoning ordinance. We review and make decisions on subdivisions, site plans, conditional uses, variances, and also appeals of the zoning administrator's determinations. The DRB has authority through the Vermont state statute and ensures due process, protects the rights of applicants and rights of the public to participate in proposals for land development within the city. Appeals of decisions made by the DRB are heard by the Vermont Superior Court Environmental Division and the Vermont Supreme Court. Kevin Lumpkin is our board chair. We are currently trying to get him here. My name is Matt Basowitz. I'm the vice chair. Harlan Miller is not here. He is our board secretary. Also joining us tonight are board members Aaron Guyette, Elsie Goodrich, David Weisberger, Caitlin Hayes, as well as Bob DePalma and Eric Vorwald.
Actually, Matt, just as a point of reference, Harlan is in the room here with me tonight.
Oh, he is.
And excellent. I'm going to, I'm going to pause here for a second so I can start my recording because I forgot to, but I also just want to make sure the audience can hear properly. Can everybody hear okay in the audience? Yeah. Okay, great.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
Excellent. I apologize for dog barking. Something's happening downstairs. First order on the agenda is, are there any changes to the agenda? Would anybody like to propose any changes to the agenda as delivered to us several days ago? Seeing a lot of shaking heads, we will move on to, let's see, number 3, which is public comment. Vermont's open meeting law grants an opportunity for public comment at every public meeting. If anybody would like to comment about anything that is not on our current agenda, this is your opportunity. Hearing nothing, seeing nothing, we will move on to the approval of the previous meeting minutes. I did have a chance to look through them. I see no changes. Does anybody else on our board here know of anything that should be changed on the minutes from our previous meeting? Hearing nothing, seeing nothing, we will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
So motioned.
David motions. Anybody second? Aaron seconds. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Harland, I don't know.
Wasn't there. Abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Motion carries with 1 abstention. Next on our agenda is an appeal of the zoning administrator's decision for 379 and 381 Main Street. As I mentioned just before we started, I personally had a chance to kind of go through the paperwork. I don't know that I'm the appropriate person to officially moderate this procedure, just because I don't know that I have all of the background information. But I believe that maybe Bob is a good person to give us a little bit of background and then tell us who we should be hearing from first. You need to unmute yourself, Bob.
Yep, I'm unmuted.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt. So this is an appeal from a certificate of conformity issued by the zoning administrator under the form-based code. As I understand the notice of appeal, the appellant is concerned about one or more of the conditions in the certificate of compliance relating to the site plans showing the wall and the plantings along the southern edge of the parking area for this project. I should point out that the certificate of conformity is set up so that there are a number of conditions to the certificate which the applicant will need to satisfy. And upon satisfaction of each of those conditions, the zoning administrator will issue a zoning permit. So we're sort of in midstream on this project, in that I do not believe all of the conditions have been satisfied as of yet. But as I understand the appeal, it relates to whether the adjoining landowner is satisfied with the proposal with respect to the wall between the parking area and the adjoining properties. I do understand the applicant has submitted an updated plan, which may or may not have provided information that the appellant was looking for. So what I would suggest is that we have the applicant, if he's here, do a brief presentation on that issue.
Thank you. At this time, I would invite the applicant to join the meeting, either here on Zoom or in person.
Yeah, Matt, so just for your reference, most everybody is in the room tonight. So the applicant, the appellant, and other members of the public are here. Actually, Kevin just joined as well, the meeting. So he is also here with us, but most everybody is here tonight.
Perfect.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Kevin. Are you able to?
So sorry, I completely, this got erased from my brain and supplanted with some personal stuff that I'm dealing with this evening. Do y'all have a quorum? Do you need me to move things around? You look very well tended here with 5 without me.
We are well attended. We invite you to join and moderate if possible, seeing as you've had some more background here. But if that's not possible, then we do have a quorum.
I would prefer to leave it in your capable hands together with those of Bob, if that's all right with you, Matt.
That's fine. Yeah.
You're the man. Sorry, folks, for interrupting, and I apologize.
That's all right. Have a good night. We'll catch you next month.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Matt, if it's the practice of the board to swear in witnesses, I think that would be appropriate to do that before anybody speaks.
It is. So at this time, anybody who choose to speak for or against this appeals process in any manner, we invite you to please swear that everything you are about to say is the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under the pains and penalties of perjury. Please raise your right hand and affirm that that is true. So lots of hands raised. Thank you so much. So now at this time, we invite the applicant to please join.
So if you want to come up to the table here, I have all the documents on my screen that I can bring up and share so that everybody out in the virtual world can see as well as the folks behind you. So,
all right.
And please introduce yourself as well.
My name is Carl Marchessault. I work for O'Leary Burke Civil Associates, and I'm the civil engineer working on the project with G4, the architects. Eric, if you could bring up sheet 1, a 60 scale plan with the existing and proposed conditions, please.
Yep.
So my understanding of the appeal is for screening, and Mr. Bruck is, I talked to him on the phone, very nice person. He's got concerns about, headlights and stuff onto Bellevue. So what we've done is that big line that you see in purple is a 6-foot high vinyl fence that we intend to put 1 foot from the property line to satisfy the conditions. The reason that we want to put in a fence on the lower section where it's neighborhood manners, I think there's a question about whether it's a fence or it should be like a wall. But on the southern property line, we feel like, and everywhere else, the reason that we're proposing that is there's quite a few mature trees. I brought an excerpt. I don't think we're going to be able to really blow it up because I brought it just on paper. But the emphasis is that there's some very big mature trees along the property line. And we're willing to put in a 6-foot fence so that there's no headlights, shining onto the neighboring properties. And we're also moving the parking lot. Well, the parking lot is about 18 feet away from the property line. So we're going to be able to put some mature trees in there per the regulations, and we feel like we're meeting all the intent of the regulations. So that's my understanding of the reason that we're here tonight.
I will entertain any questions from the board if there are any.
So these trees that we see on this plan are all proposed to be planted?
The green trees on there that you kind of see as row trees are to be planted, correct. It's to kind of give it that sort of row look that I think is the intention of the plan, the intention of the regulations. And then the screening, the regulations say 1 foot from the property line, so that's where we're showing the purple sort of lines and or little squares portrays the fence as shown in the legend and through across the entire property. Yep, just like Eric's showing it there. And we're also doing the neighborhood manners in that, and the reason, I don't think it applies here, but we said that pretty explicitly, that we're doing the fence instead of the wall in an effort to try to minimize tree and root disturbance to try to preserve as many of those big mature trees that are near that property line as much as possible.
Is it safe to assume that the trees we see in the plans are meant more for aesthetics as opposed to screening, and the fence
Yeah.
is?
The fence is for screening and the trees are for, you know, the visual appearance, because, you know, they should grow up above, you know, the 6 foot vinyl fence. And so it's really just to kind of give it that, you know, I guess, you know, just give it that appearance of, you know, big growing trees or big, you know, trees that are gonna grow to be mature and, you know, canopy over the parking area, provide some shade. I mean, I imagine that's the intent of the regulations. So the spacing and all that kind of stuff is based on, you know, your regulations.
Okay.
If I read the memo from the zoning administrator correctly, it seems that there's no specifications or requirements for the wall that apply in this location, but it seems like that's what the appellant is mostly concerned about. Do you have specifications or drawings for what that fence will be, or will those be spelled out before the zoning or building permit is applied for?
To be honest with you, I don't recall if we put you know, a specific detail, but it's very explicit on the plans, the call outs for a 6 foot high vinyl fence. And so my understanding it'd be 6 foot high white vinyl fence, just like you could get at Home Depot or, you know, any kind of like specialty store that sells fencing or have it installed, but that's the intention there. And I believe that along that southern property line, our only requirement is a fence and not a wall. Is that correct, Eric?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's our intention, 6 foot high white vinyl fence. I mean, if there's any doubt in anybody's mind, we could certainly put a detail on one of the detail sheets and call out more specific if the board so insists. And I guess, you know, we'd be happy to have that conversation with you folks tonight if you find that helpful to satisfy all the neighbors' concerns.
Now, did you say you had something on paper that might offer up a better visual representation of what we're talking about?
I brought views from the corridor, and I think we could hold them up to the camera. But
You want to see what we're on.
Eric, can you zoom in?
If possible, I'd like to see if we can get a copy of those entered.
Zoom in. Just hang out there. He can zoom in his camera.
Okay.
This camera here. You just stay where you are, Carl.
Oh,
Let him do.
okay, I'll stay right here.
You just hold him up.
I don't know. Okay. So this is the first excerpt that I brought. And it's really just a Google Earth image from the street perspective. I don't know if you guys, I mean, I can get closer to the camera too, but.
Actually, let me stop my share as well. That might help.
I mean, I could definitely, I'm going to leave these with Eric.
And what are we looking at there? The mature trees?
Yes.
Yes.
So I don't know if you can zoom in more or I can get closer, but yeah, this is really tough. All right. This is not going to help. Okay. So,
I can see it.
yeah, let's look at
I can see that. So all those trees, all those will be cut down?
this is the street view for, I believe it's 53 to the right that you can see the garage in the back. And so in perspective on the plan, I mean, we could go back and point to the plan, but I guess kind of visualize what that looks like, the garage in the background there. And then we'll show you where it is on the map. So that's that one. And then we're gonna show the other side of the house right next to it, which is that one. So that's the street view looking from Bellevue towards what will be the fence behind that garage on this one right here. And on the plan view, Eric, if you would bring that back up, I'm pretty sure you can point to it. But I can guide you kind of where those pictures show the representation from the street view.
Let me get the right picture up here.
Sorry that I'm asking so many things, Eric, to jump back and forth, but I know you're the man, so, you know, we're gonna let you do your thing. So, yeah, that's it. So we're looking right and left of that house on those two views. And obviously from the street view, there's a lot going on there in terms of structure. So for that particular property, even though he was the one concerned, I think really you're not gonna see much. But for all the other properties that don't have, you know, structures that close to the property line, I think the fence will be more of a benefit perhaps, as far as, you know, lights and that kind of stuff, if that's the concern. So just because, like, when I spoke with Mr. Bruck, I thought, you know, he was the one most interested in the proper screening. I just wanted to bring those visual images so that we could take a closer look with the board about what that's gonna look like from the street perspective and, you know, what you'd see passing by and that kind of stuff.
So that first image that you held up with the current existing trees, is the goal for this new planting after these trees planted behind this vinyl fence mature to mimic what's existing there currently?
The trees that we're gonna propose are gonna look obviously like more row trees because a lot of stuff is kind of brushy. And obviously there's no consistency with species and whatnot. So, you know, in having to build a parking lot, we're gonna lose some trees. And so I feel like the trees that we're proposing are gonna be just a good addition to sort of make the transition from existing to new plantings to parking lot.
Will you be keeping any trees?
We're gonna keep as many trees as we can. But unfortunately, I wanna do some grading, and you can see those contours on the plan. We can zoom into it, but I'm not really sure if, you know, Public Works has looked at this, and I'll be happy to talk about drainage, but I don't know if that's part of what I should be talking about, Eric. Or
You have the floor.
we're gonna do some regrading on the property to bring all the stormwater to those two structures that you see directly behind the building. The reason there's two structures there is if one fails, there's a second one. I just don't wanna take any chances. I don't want anybody to get flooded. And then we're gonna put in a brand new pipe and we're gonna connect that storm pipe to the existing run. And the intention there is to minimize any stormwater issues.
And then are those stormwater basins near the second driveway out?
So if you zoom in, right behind the building, Eric, can you zoom in there? Or we could look at plan sheet 2 as well, if you want. That's a bigger perspective, but. So if you look on that plan where Eric's pointing to right there, all the drainage where those two sort of handicap spaces that you see, there's one basin there, and then there's two basins right there. That's the low spot of the site. One spot is 1 foot lower than the other basin, so if the low basin plugs, the second basin will take all the water and drain it away. That's the sort of fail-safe. And then if that doesn't work, it would overflow because the basin trajectory that goes to that gravel wetland is lower than the owner's property. So the intention is to drain all the stormwater into that gravel wetland, and then there's a structure that you see on the bottom left corner of your screen, and that's the outlet mechanism to let the water back into the structure at a controlled rate because we have to get a state stormwater permit.
Have you acquired that from the state, or is that still in the
No,
works?
because we had an appeal, and I guess from what I understand, it's rare to see an appeal with form-based code. We were just waiting to see how this was gonna go.
We've seen many appeals with the farm-based code.
Well, I mean,
Anecdotally.
it's my first one, so I just thought we should be prudent and see what happens, because just to lay the cards on the table, if there's anything wrong with the plans or there's significant changes and we're already into the state, then we're going to get an amendment, which pretty much doubles the length of time and more money to spend. And so we want to make sure that everybody's happy with the plan before we go get a state permit. That was our thinking.
The other exit out of the parking lot onto Bellevue, is there another depression there?
Yeah.
Right there.
I spoke with
What is
all
that?
I spoke with all the folks on our team, and I told them that it was my opinion that because we're over an acre, that we were going to have to put a stormwater feature there. So even though we're just creating a 20-foot wide access for the fire people that asked that we should have a second emergency access, because there's a gravel surface there, we have to address stormwater as well. That's why that feature is there. So it's a pre-treatment to a basin, and when we do our full investigation of the stormwater system, we may have to work with DPW to put an overflow, but we haven't, we've talked about it with Ryan Lambert, but we haven't finalized
Sort of a
the
placeholder.
potential overflow or need to one. So we need to do test pits, to be
Yeah,
frank. Like March, we're gonna do some test pits, we're gonna finalize the stormwater, and then we'll submit to the state. That's our intention.
And then is that a similar situation with the far rear
Yep,
of the lot?
that's correct.
Yeah.
So the gravel wetland, there's no doubt about it. We don't have to do any testing. We know that it's kind of wet there.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna meet the 3 feet of separation. What's gonna dictate the system 2 and 3 is whether we have the 3 feet of separation in groundwater, and by the maps, we should. But that's why we don't go by the maps. So we're gonna go do dig some holes and determine what the most appropriate system for those two will be.
And so your fence will extend the whole southern border. What about that? I guess, is that the east end there? that
The
we're
far
looking at?
bottom there,
Yeah.
there's a chain link fence there now with a bunch of vines and vineyards. I don't have any pictures, but I have some in the file. We actually surveyed another property very close to this one. We have a lot of information for that area of the corridor. I don't have it with me tonight, but let's just say that because of the stormwater features and proximity, we feel like we don't have to put a fence there because there's already a chain link fence and it would look kind of weird because we don't own the fence.
Yes.
So we were just thinking, well, let's stop it at the corner.
Sure.
So that was sort of, our thought process there.
And your neighbor to the north is the school district?
Yep.
Is anyone from the school district here this evening? Was the school district involved in any of the talks?
They were notified of all the meetings.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys want to know this, the board, but I spoke with their engineer from EV.
Yep.
And I asked for information about their stormwater system draining onto our property. And
He wasn't.
let's just say it was a little
forthcoming.
abrasive, a little bit. And he said things that I didn't like, so I said something to the fact of, well, maybe we could just close that storm pipe off then. And he goes, well, you can't do that. And it's like, well, it's our property. So we're fixing a problem that we feel isn't ours, but we're volunteering to fix that problem in an effort to sort of allow this project forward.
Is there a storm pipe from the school's property onto this
The
property?
best way to see it is Eric have, just scroll that up and look at the existing conditions maybe.
I don't want to get too far into
No.
the proverbial cattails here.
No.
No stormwater, pun intended.
So
But
on the existing conditions plan is a lighter blue shade line, and it's a little hard to see,
yes.
but there's an existing pipe that goes through that garage and follows Eric's cursor, and we have locations on the pipe, on that blue pipe that goes all the way up to the sort of towards Norman Street there.
Goes through that garage.
It does, yeah, not ideal.
Hopefully there's no drain pipe in there.
Yeah, we've talked to the owner, and he said that there's no settlement issues and he's not overly concerned, but part of our solution is to line that pipe and fix it, so that the city has more control over where that stormwater goes from here forward after the project's completed.
And that pipe flows south.
Correct. Well, that
Or,
plan, yeah, it
I'm
does.
sorry, Project South on
Yeah,
this.
project south.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at that plan, we're kind of like north like this, but yeah. Well, Eric's got it, that's the perfect orientation for visual purposes.
Yeah, yep.
On sheet 2, I think you've got a note that is in conflict with what you're saying.
Okay.
The existing storm line in disrepair to be abandoned, pointing to that line.
There might be a miscellaneous note on there, because what happened is, well, it's a long story, but the short version is we were gonna reroute the stormwater around his house, and then he decided he didn't want to tear up his yard, so we're actually gonna do it from structure to structure. So that structure right there shouldn't be there, should have been erased, that's a mistake. But we're gonna line that pipe that goes through his garage and basically restore it to new condition, or as best as we can, so that it's usable. So the long-winded write-up that we wrote back to the city of Winooski was to explore slip lining, spray coating, or any fashion that, after investigation, what was going to be the best solution to fix that existing storm pipe right there through that. Because I don't think we should put an easement and put the burden on the city of Winooski, and I think they would have been okay with it if it wasn't through the Mr. Lesarge's garage, but that's the kind of discussion that we had with the city and the public works, and so we left the easement starting at the back, and then we're just gonna repair the existing pipe, and everything from there forward in blue is gonna be brand new. So if there's a miscellaneous or erroneous note there, we'd be happy to make that change, because these changes happen pretty rapidly to get it to Eric for the 10th. And so I was kind of rushing to get these plans modified to make that change.
Is this property going to have an easement across the Lesage property?
No, the easement is gonna start right at that structure that's pointed to the fix right there in that note.
What's to stop the Lesage property from removing that pipe in the future?
Well, if he removes it, he's gonna get flooded, so it'd be to his advantage not to remove it, but I don't.
Isn't that the same argument you were just making about the school, though?
You got me there.
That's true. That's true.
Well, we definitely don't want him to remove the pipe, and I think I should emphasize that that was just a joke. We have no intention of blocking the pipe. So I was joking to the guy because he kind of called my bluff, so I called his. So.
Oh, yeah, Caitlin.
I have a few questions. So one related to the storm pipe is, if there's not a easement or a right of way, who's responsible for maintaining that in the future?
Myself, the city of Winooski, Public Works, and I think the school district do not know the answer to that.
Okay.
To be honest, that's just the honest to goodness truth. Nobody wants to touch it, but it's there, and it's draining a lot of property, so it's in our best interest to make the repairs for everyone's benefit. That's my opinion.
Okay. And I have one other question. I'd read that the provision for the fence was that it was to be between 4 and 8 feet.
Yeah.
And I just was curious, if would there be a benefit? You had mentioned that the fence that in this site plan is going to be 6 feet high. Is there a benefit for those adjacent property owners for it to be the additional 2 feet? I understand that it seems like it's lower, so it probably wouldn't protect from headlights or anything more than the 6-foot fence already will.
So usually like a measured sight distance is at 3.5. I feel like a headlight is more like a 2.5 or 3, but regardless of you want to split hairs on that, the thought process is there is 6 feet, you can kind of see over it. It's not like, oh my God, I can't see over it. Like if you're quite tall, you can kind of see over a 6 fence, but it's going to provide the adequate screening. And I feel like 8 feet is kind of daunting. We just thought that was just too much, and we thought 4 feet wasn't enough, so we went in the middle and went 6. That was our thought process.
Okay. And then I just had one other follow-up question. So for any new trees that are planted, I noticed that they're, I think, ginkgo trees. And this maybe is a question for Eric too. I'm just curious that if there's anything that asks to have native trees planted when we're for projects like this. Or if there's no regulations or requirements for that.
So I'll tell you my answer, I guess, if that's okay, Eric. That species, we work with Gardner Supply. They're a local supplier, and they say they're hardy, zone 4. there's just a lot of good things going for that type of tree. It's very hardy, salt tolerant, just resists cold. I mean, there's all these things. So every time I do a project, I consult with a local, predominantly because there's a lot of towns that actually accept gardener supplies like design that we work with them. In this case, I consulted with them because we did another project on Main Street and we chose the same species, and they recommended for this site, for the soils that we showed them on the map was most appropriate.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I just was curious about that.
Excellent. Any other questions from the board? I have just one other. Okay. So my question, just getting back to the fencing, which is what this appeal is primarily about. The north border along Norman, there are several houses there. I did see a purple line adjacent to those. Is it safe to assume that you're planning the exact same fence?
Yes, we're gonna do a 6-foot vinyl fence. It matches the legend, and that's our intention, is to meet the neighborhood manners with a 6-foot vinyl fence.
Okay.
There's an existing retaining wall there now, so we're gonna go right against that. So that.
Okay.
Yep.
And I don't.
I have one question.
Go for it, Dave.
Yeah. What in general is the relation of the new parking lot to the houses, say on Bellevue? I don't see many grades down there. Is it pretty flat with those, or is it up higher?
Actually, the location that you're referring to, if you look on the Bellevue property, there's grading that basically hits almost existing grading almost immediately. And all the way down through that corridor is just to be slightly higher and then drain and tie in to create a swale to those 3 catch basins. And on the other side, we're draining all the storm water towards the sort of easterly feature. So all the grading is east-west. But the way you're looking at it, I guess from where you're looking at it, you can tell by the grading it's all right to left. Or all right or all left. The high point starts at the emergency access and goes either direction.
So it looks like the whole site is sloping up to the east.
We're trying to create a high point. You know, I can't see my grades, but just from doing it, it's almost, it's just slightly left there where there looks like a V shape, I believe. Eric, if yeah, you can see that V shape. That's the high point. Yeah, Eric, right, a little bit more right. Sorry, a little bit, yeah, right there. That's that V shape. Those 2 contours are the high point.
The road, the emergency access, so the residents cannot use that normally?
Our understanding is it's for emergency access only.
And how do you control that?
I'm not sure if that was really asked of us. Eric, were we asked how we're going to control that? Or? And I mean, not trying to put you on the spot or anything.
No, that's okay. The fire department did ask for a second access. I believe the certificate of conformity, which should be included in your agenda packet, does indicate an emergency access that is regulated per whatever the fire department is looking for. So if that's, the intent is not for that to be used by the residents. It's intended for.
So there'll be a gate or something.
Or some,
maybe.
that's the expectation, yes. And
Yeah.
whatever that is will be something that is discussed with the fire department so that they can get in as needed.
And so that the adjoiners don't have traffic.
Correct.
Ripping through there. Not that anyone would rip, but they would drive through there.
You should live on Bellevue Street. Yeah.
They would rip through there, is what you're saying. Doesn't just happen on Bellevue. People rip everywhere. That's a discussion for another evening.
Yes. So obviously this appeal is primarily about the privacy screening, the fencing, and the request for a design before that goes to the approval process. So keeping in line with that, if there are no other questions about that, I believe that we can probably talk to the appellant if there are no other questions for Carl. Hearing nothing, seeing nothing, let us ask the appellants if they are there or a representative of the appellant.
He is
Please
here.
join. Okay.
Charles,
And who do we have?
Rick? Bruck. Yes, please. Please come up and introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, I did not catch your name.
My name's Chuck Bruck.
Okay.
Yes, it rhymes. So I live on 25 Bellevue Street. I'm the appellate for this. Would like to make it known. Did talk to both Joe and Carl about the plans a couple weeks ago, and they did give me a preview of some of the updates. I do think it is important, though, that we do have this appeals process, as the project review committee seemed to be a pretty inadequate forum to address some of the concerns, and I like that to be a development review board. You guys are asking some great questions. So I think this whole part, the appeal process is really to make sure that both myself and the rest of the neighbors to have all of our concerns heard in a way that's going to be productive and help hopefully the whole development process here. I'm just pulling something right out of the form-based code from 103, making sure that we have a complementary relationship between the corridors and the surrounding neighborhoods. I think that's really important to this entire process, that everybody actually does have a chance to get heard on the record and make sure that any concerns do get addressed. So in regards to the fence specifically, it wasn't just for my property on 25 Bellevue. Speaking to other neighbors, it's certainly a concern for everybody in terms of both the screening considerations and also just safety concerns of having a much more increased both vehicle and pedestrian traffic going through. So we didn't want to make sure, or we wanted to make sure that we didn't have a bunch of people traipsing through backyards unhindered, as the original plans didn't have any specifically prescribed screening or fencing, and really the basis for the appeal at that point.
Anything else to add?
I mean, at this point, I think it would be, Carl was great on the phone when I was able to talk to him. Joe was also very agreeable when discussing just some of the concerns, and they sounded like they were very much willing to work with the neighborhood. So I think as long as that dialogue can remain open, as some of the finer details do get hammered out, like the fence specifically, and I think, you know, addressing any of the other concerns that have been come up while talking with the other neighbors, like drainage was one specifically. I know that there's concerns around removing some of the mature canopy that exists there. I know that it's not going to be possible to save everything, but I think making sure that all efforts are included to make sure that we do that will be important, as we do have a nice biodiversity going on in the backs of all of our homes. I think it'd be great to be able to keep some of that. So that would be my goal out of this.
So it was my understanding that there was no indication of a fence when these plans were initially, when you first saw these plans, and requesting better evidence. You wanted to see what they were going to actually do for your privacy screening. Are you satisfied at this point knowing there is going to be a 6-foot fence installed along with those trees?
Yeah.
Or are you looking for a more specific design?
At the moment, knowing that they exist in the plan, I think is sufficient. But again, like I mentioned, I think it'd be beneficial for everybody involved to have the input of the adjoining neighbors throughout the process. As you know, the plans exist on paper and nothing's been put actually in motion yet.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Trevor?
Yeah, regarding an expectation for open communication lines remaining as this project moves forward, are there any sort of guardrails or specific expectations that you'd like to voice?
I mean, so far, Carl and Joe, like I mentioned, they were communicative, receptive, and seemed really open to working both with myself on my concerns and, you know, the neighbors in general. So I think as long as that there's good faith behind that, then that's sufficient for me.
Okay.
Thank you. David, did you have something? No, oh, you've raised your finger, looking like you had something to say. Any other questions for Chuck before we move on? Okay, thank you so much, Chuck. I appreciate it. We will now invite members of the crowd, either online or in person, to voice concerns or voice support for the project, the appeal, all of those. If anybody would like to.
So Matt, let me, I'll just jump in here real quick. We did have 2 people sign up to speak tonight, and they are both here in the room with me.
Okay.
So if you want, I can call them up in the order that they signed up, and then we can open it up to the rest of the folks in the room here, and then go to anybody that's online. We have 2 people attending virtually as well, so if you're okay with that, I'll go in that order.
That sounds wonderful. Who do we have first?
Okay, Emma, you are first up if you want to speak.
I actually think that there are some people here that have comments more specific to what we've already discussed, so I'm willing to bypass mine and move to let people.
Okay, we can come back to you. Andrew, you are next on the list.
Hi, I'm Andrew Wolf of 21 Bellevue Street. I'm a landscaper. I'm trying to be a member of the Vermont Nursery and Landscape Association and a certified horticulturist. And my primary concerns are about the trees and the landscaping. And from what I can see from what Joe's talking about, that it's on their mind, and that's great. You know, at least it's on their mind. And I was just really hoping that they would just preserve as much of the canopy as they can over there. I know it's difficult with the construction project. There's a couple butternut trees that are super mature, and that's very rare. There's a lot of birds back there that, you know, there's going to be a hiccup in where they go during the construction. And I just wanted to just highlight Chapter 29 of the Municipal Code that talks a lot about public tree planting and provides some guidelines for that, you know, using native species and ensuring, you know, well, that's a different code, I guess, to talk about the complementary relationship between the corridors and the surrounding neighborhoods. In my mind, you would, at least to some degree, preserve the existing aesthetic, you know. And I think with a nice row of trees where they're all, you know, where all the mature branches are touching each other, some shrubs and a vinyl fence, I think that would be accomplished with this new project. And so that's my main concern. And it's really nice to hear Joe speaking and to see those plans. Thank you.
I think what I'm gathering is you support the proposed changes.
I support it. I guess my concern is how many trees are we getting? You know, is the canopy going to be tight enough? There's really no guidance in the municipal code for that, but just a number to throw around here in the Vermont Urban and Community Forest Program. There was a public inventory of trees in Winooski in 2013 that showed that Winooski, by and large, is 31% covered by tree canopy. And, you know, as a number to shoot for, I would say I would really like to see 31% of whatever they're building covered by tree canopy to follow suit with, you know, what's already going on in the neighborhood there. So that's what I came to say.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Any other questions for him?
It's not really a question, but well, maybe it's a question for Eric. It seems that the section that was pointed out in the memo requires that the trees be planted on a maximum spacing of 30 feet. And I don't know what a ginkgo tree ends up with as a mature tree, but that seems fairly close. I mean, I don't know how much closer you'd want to plant them. Yeah, and I guess, you know, if we were going back to ask if that's what we're seeing on the plan, are those 30 feet centers?
That's what the code requires, so that's what we would require them to install.
And Eric, can you clarify the intent? I don't really understand the section 506 about the tree list. It's not really a list. It's basically anything that's hardy in this zone is what it sounds like.
That is correct. I don't know if when the code was written that there was a separate list that was just not included, or I don't know the history there, but you're correct.
So I'm going to go back to Andrew actually with a question, seeing as he is knowledgeable about landscaping. Do you believe that the layout and species that have been picked so far will adequately recreate the canopy that already exists?
Well, no, because there's going to be a parking lot there, you know, and there's going to be construction. It'll definitely be more neat and orderly, but I would very much like to see shade trees, you know, that would be a little more of a windbreak rather than street trees, you know. But I mean, anything's good, but rather than ginkgos and crab apples, you know, I'd rather see maples and oaks, personally.
Okay.
On page 5 on the landscape plant list says the tree symbol can be a combination of any zone for approved trees, including red maple or honey locust or ginkgo as in the chart. So I'm wondering, maybe we can ask Chuck again, what if the intent is for sure to go with the ginkgos, or are those other ones options?
For the tree screening?
Yeah.
It'd be great to see a little bit more, again, biodiversity in terms of what's being offered for the screening options. So if we can have something that's not just going to be uniform ginkgos lined up on the parking lot, I think it makes it a more interesting space in general and provides a little bit more options.
Can't hear, I'm sorry.
Chuck is saying he would prefer a mix of species just for greater interest. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andrew, for joining us. Is there anybody else that would like to come up and speak?
I would say if you're interested in speaking, come on up, and then Emma, if you have anything you want to say, feel free to jump in.
My apologies, Eric. When I sent my letter to you, I thought that was my go ahead to speak, so I didn't know I had to sign up for it.
No problem.
My name is Mike Myers. I live at 47 Bellevue Street. I want to thank everyone for showing up here tonight. I think this is a productive way to do an appeal process. Mr. Handy, I'd like to thank you for being here. You've been a great partner for the city of Winooski for many, many years. I have a few questions, not only on the fencing for the appeal, and I want to make it clear that we weren't just looking for screening. We were looking to secure our properties. Now that you're taking 2.5 acres of green space that is really not passable, and you know, many of us have sheds and we store campers and boats and stuff in our backyards. I'm gonna take my mask off. Is that okay? So I can speak a little bit better?
Sure, while you're speaking.
Security was a big reason why we were wanting a secured fence line on our properties. Especially with the high school there's gonna be a lot more traffic in the back there. Obviously, many of us hang out in our backyards because it's a very nice, if you know Bellevue Street, our backyards are very nice, and many of us spend our summer nights back there. So I want to thank the architect or the engineer, Carl, we haven't met, for getting this done, and I do support this sort of fencing. I think it's gonna be very hard to either jump, and I think it's gonna do its job to screen our properties. When I wrote my letter to Eric, I did have a huge issue with the drainage. Anyone that lives on Bellevue Street, especially in my section, my sump pump runs 365 days a year. In fact, it runs just as much in the wintertime as it does in the summertime. So I have a huge concern about the drainage and the water that, if this isn't done right, could cause a severe problem to my cinder block foundation that's already kind of has some issues with it as is. Also, when it rains, my backyard fills up. And if the rain does not drain properly, or if we get a huge storm where the basins can't handle, or the drains, the grade can't handle it, where's that excess water gonna go? There's a lot of green space being paved over now. And I have a huge concern about what's gonna happen to my property for drainage. The other issue, I'm glad I came here because I didn't realize the school had a drainage, because I'm wondering if that's part of the problem with our yards back there, with the school drainage, because like I said, I think it's called a French drainage system. You have that 3-inch moat system around your basement. You can constantly see water pour in my basement, even this time of year when, I know it's been raining, but you shouldn't have water coming in your basement this time of year. So that to me is a real concern, and not just to me, but to my fellow neighbors on each side of me. So I was kind of surprised that the drainage part wasn't on the appeal, because it was kind of what one of my 4 most important things was when I wrote my letter of appeal. And I just need to know, is that been lost in transaction, or is there, how are we communicating here? How are we gonna solve an issue like this?
With the drainage?
With the drainage, because I had my yard surveyed years ago because I wanted to try to get some kind of proper draining, because when water puddles up in my driveway, it doesn't seep into my yard. In fact, when it rains, and especially in a good downpour, which we have more and more of, my backyard looks like a swamp. Actual water does not drain in my yard. So I'm a little concerned about losing, let me start over. From my driveway to the back field, I think it's a 6-inch difference of height. So there's water constantly draining towards Bellevue Street from my yard. And that's not just my yard, but it's my neighbors next to me. And I can't confirm, Jeremy and Cammie, what address was it? 27, it's Chuck's neighbors. I can't speak for them, but I do know that my neighbor and myself, our driveways are so much lower than the yard in the field that water is just constantly making its way towards our houses. And I know this new development and I don't know if I missed it, but is the parking lot gonna be even higher than our yards? And is that water gonna be able to work its way even more, even faster? And that's,
A great example that I will tell you is I did a project.
Actually, sorry, Carl, if you don't mind coming up so that we can catch you on the microphone there.
The intent is to regrade the parking in a fashion to drain east-west. And so all the water that is currently going towards Bellevue now, because we are higher, the intention is to create a swale to intercept the water that's coming off. So you're absolutely correct that there will be more water, but it will be graded in a manner that we're actually going to pick it up and control it towards the stormwater system that's on the plans now. The best real-world example I can tell you is we had a project that people were nowhere near as nice as you folks have been tonight. And they were completely against us, said, my basements are flooded and this is awful, you're gonna create more problems, and we heard it all. After the project was done a year later, everybody was thanking us for doing the project because it solved their water problem. So my guess is, and I can't be certain, but the way we got it graded, more than likely you're gonna have less water coming onto you because we're gonna intercept it and, you know, put it in the basins. So that's,
Perfect.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it does, and but it brings up another point that, because as you know, we've had a really, really cold and rough winter, and my driveway has actually risen 10 inches from the sidewalk. So what kind of plan B do we have intact in case we get the frost heaves affecting the parking lot, not just the first year, but how about 5 years down the road, or maybe 10 years down the road when it starts because of the frost heaves? Because it's a real concern, 'cause, you know, it's an additional expense that I'm not sure if myself or my neighbors really want to take on if we have to try to redrain our property because of a 2.5 acre parking lot. And that's, I mean, it's a real concern. And I'm glad that I can be put on the record, because I think there needs to be some literature put in there that can address these issues. And I'm really hoping that that's the fact that, you know, progress is good. And I think that this new drainage system in the back could be really beneficial for my neighbors and myself. And I'm certainly hoping that's the case, but I'm hoping that there's a plan B in case it doesn't. The next, can I just keep going on? This is more than not the appeal. Can I discuss stuff off the appeal that's been discussed here tonight? Sure. The existing tree cover. In the backfield behind my house is an apple orchard. And I'm wondering what is going to happen to, I think there's 50 to, you know, I don't even know. At one point there's hundreds of apple trees back there, but the last I knew there's at least 50 that I counted. Because I was back there trying to cut the vines, because the vines have actually really been very harmful to the canopy in the back. In fact, I have a silver maple that is about 5 feet in diameter. It's one of the biggest trees on Bellevue Street. And that brings up another concern. Because of that canopy, and the reason I went back there to cut the vines, because the vines actually made it to my silver maple, and it's actually it started damaging my tree. So I was trying to save my silver maple because it's a beautiful tree. It provides, you know, as much as I hate the tree because it sheds 3 times a year, it provides a lot of shade. So when we're in the back there on the 90-degree hot, humid days, it brings some relief. But that tree is on the fence line, and I don't know, those roots run deep. So just not for my concern, but for my neighbor's concern as well, existing trees that are on our properties, what's gonna happen to them if the root system gets damaged and those trees die? Because that tree right there, to call a tree service to come in and take down, is gonna cost an exponential amount of money. And it's something that I don't wanna lose. I have 2 of them in my yard, and I love them both. And I think that there should be some insurances put in case something like that does happen. Again, it's probably one of the oldest trees in Winooski. And I hate to see, because of progress, that my property's gonna lose that luxury of having that tree there. And I don't know if you wanna just me to go through this, and then you guys can ask questions or answer questions. I mean, how would you prefer to work this out?
Again, to the chair.
Yep. How long of a list are we talking here?
This is just stuff I heard here tonight. I just wrote down. I have a few other issues that, like, for example, the emergency lane. That's something new that has been put into this project that wasn't on the original draft, and I'm trying to find out how that was snuck in there, so to speak. And if it was the fire department requesting it, that's one thing. But if it has to be in there, there is another instance like that at the end of West Street in Winooski, where there is a development. It's probably about 10 years now. They put a secured fence so people couldn't drive through from West Street to that new development that's off Mallett's Bay. And that would be a prime example of something that I would like to see, so we don't have traffic going in between 2 houses where there's kids in the neighborhood and those 2 locations. Some of them the kids that live by that emergency lane are older high school kids, but I have an 11-year-old that likes to ride her bike, and I don't want people trying to cut through because they want to miss the traffic and be non-compliant to the rules. But again, at the end of West Street, there's a secured fence with a lock that any emergency operator should have a key to, in order for, if that's the case, because to be honest with you, that wasn't on the original, that I saw anyway. And we were told from somewhere, I don't know where, I can't say where I heard it, but we were also told that that lane was not going to be put in. And I'm seeing it here for the first time tonight. And there was another issue that has been starting to happen, and this is really no new problem to Winooski, but there's been a rodent infestation down on that property. I think it's 381. People were living there and squatting there for a number of months that all their garbage was thrown into the garage. And there's actually been signs of rats from the neighbors on Norman Street to my neighbors up that upper part of Bellevue Street. So I would like to request, before any destruction of those properties get done, if there could be an exterminator to go through to make sure that our pets and our houses, even our health, is not affected by a rodent problem that they scatter once the buildings get demoed. I think that will end my questions, and I appreciate the board's time, and I appreciate the developer's time. And if they have any answers or any questions for me, I'd be happy to listen or hear or answer.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, we brought up some good stuff we'll talk about when we get into the deliberative session. So thank you so much. Would anybody else like to speak tonight?
Oh, come on up, Emma.
My name is Emma Lenchner, and I'm also a resident at 25 Bellevue Street. My comment does not directly apply to the appeal, but I would like to use this opportunity of public comment to speak, as long as the chair is okay with that.
I'm okay with that, as long as we keep it fairly brief.
Of course. I'm mostly just concerned about the dwelling units in this building. My understanding is that it's about 68 studio and 1-bedroom apartments, and then 4 2-bedroom apartments. And when you take a look at some of the other developments that have gone up on Main Street in only the past 2 years, you've got 355 Main Street, which is right on our corner of Bellevue. That is 30 studio and 1-bedroom apartments. And then down the road, you've got, I think it starts at 211 Main Street, which is another 27 1-bedroom units. All the while, we're learning about this news of 300 Main Street being force evicted, and that's one of the only apartment complexes in Winooski that has family-sized dwellings. And so truly, this is just a plea to you guys to consider what is really good for this community of Winooski. You know, that's 24 families that are gonna be most likely forced out of our town because there's not family-sized dwellings available to them, not even to mention affordable family-sized dwellings available to them. So I truly just wanted to take the opportunity to say that I want to make sure we're considering what Winooski needs, what the citizen and the community needs, and maybe not just what is gonna make the most money out of this building. And that's really all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Would anybody else like to speak on the subject of the appeal that has been presented?
For the folks that are attending virtually, if you do want to say anything, you can use the raise hand feature or use the chat to indicate that.
At this point, if Carl's okay with it, I'd like to bring him back up just to find out if there's anything that was brought up that he would like to address before we move on.
After hearing all the testimony from the neighbors, I don't want to be a rule breaker, but I think we should strongly make a consideration with the board of maybe offering a little bit of flexibility on that 1 foot from the property line. Yeah, I like straight lines. I'm not gonna lie, I'm an engineer. I like straight lines, but there's trees out there these people want to preserve. We should give them some flexibility, let them just meander around some of those big root structures. You're gonna have posts every 8 feet or 16, whatever panels we choose. And we have an opportunity here to make those holes in locations where we're not gonna damage tree roots, and it's just you guys making that decision to allow, I think honestly, an appropriate figure might be just a lay down like 6 feet. Like I'm 6 feet tall, and if you gave us, 1 to 6 feet in that 5 feet of change, I think we could do a lot. I don't want it to, zigzag too much, but I feel like if there's a place where there's one big tree and we're gonna 45 for 10 feet, and then, maybe 6 feet of it on a 45 or whatever, and then go at that angle for 10 feet to preserve some trees for the neighbor's benefit, I don't see any harm in that. I mean, I specifically made it 8 feet, 18 feet to give that kind of flexibility. And even if the new tree, uproots the fence 15 years later, and then we'll just deal with the fence then. I mean, trees are gonna grow and root structures are gonna get bigger, but like the man, I can't remember his name, but we're not gonna preserve, we're not gonna reestablish like a big monster tree that has, all this value that was represented tonight. So that's it. So just give us some flexibility on maybe being able to move that fence, instead of the 1 foot. I think that'd be appropriate.
And you think 6 feet?
You want me to answer questions too? As far as drainage goes, I really do feel it's one of those instances where we're gonna make it better. Is there a guarantee? I mean, it's hard to offer a guarantee like that, but I mean, I've been doing this stuff for 23 years, and yeah, there's always gonna be more drainage, but you got such a problem here now that I think all the sump pumps running and those questions that you heard tonight are as a result of, I don't know if you know what a flout tank is, but it's like a big toilet. You're getting water that's rising up 3 feet, and then it's flushing out, and it's causing a plume of sediment in the city's storm system, and they know about it. We're gonna fix that problem, and it's gonna help the neighbors. That's my opinion, but I'm fairly certain that that's what's gonna happen. Is there anything else that I missed that you guys want me to say? Be happy to try to answer.
Other than the fence post, do you have any concerns about the, how the trees on the neighbor's property would be affected by the construction?
Yeah, I think that's why I'm kind of offering that, you guys give us some flexibility to move the fence, so that if we're going down that row and we see a big mature tree, we can just avoid it by moving the fence, meandering it in and out, basically from the property line 1 foot in to maybe like 6 feet towards our project, because we have room.
I'm asking about the grading in general rather than the fence.
No, the grading, it will just follow the grading. So after we get it graded, we'll put the fence in after. So I want to grade the property first, because I don't want the fence to look, kind of weird. But after our regrading's done for the parking lot, then we put in the fence.
I think my question is, will your regrading possibly affect any of the trees on the neighbor's property?
Not on the neighbor's property, no. We don't show any grading onto the neighbor's property. No, the grading stops short of our property line. It's pretty clear on the plans.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Carl before we move on?
Yeah, I have another question.
I'm sorry, is that Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carl, appreciate that candor, what you just said. Can you tell me, from the end of the parking lot, the green space from our property lines, what's that amount of feet? Is it 10, 15, 6?
I think from the edge of the parking lot, the problem is about 18. It's about
18 feet.
It's
So, okay. That's all my question was, because I know in order to start something new, you got to dig in and get everything down. I was more worried about that damaging the tree roots that extend out past. I don't know how far silver maple tree roots or any tree on that Bellevue Street south end extend out. But that was I know you guys aren't going to drill a post down and hit a roof, but I was more worried about the digging up and getting the grading straightened out, all the infrastructure put in. And then just one follow-up on the emergency corridor. Now that we're talking about the fencing, is the fencing going to follow that roadway too, or is that going to be all open between? with a secure fence?
The vinyl fence shows stopping on the plan just because, obviously, the emergency access wouldn't be usable if the fence went through, but, the only thing I can offer is, on another project we did between Winooski and Colchester's, there was a breakaway fence, and I think we'd be agreeable to something like that, instead of just a chain, and if the truck had to go through, it just breaks through it. But,
Oh, so you did that property, that's
Carl.
in one street.
Sorry, Carl, the board can't hear what you're saying.
Oh,
I was talking about, I was just talking about a breakaway fence, that's all, on the emergency access, so.
okay, so what I was thinking, are you guys willing to come down to keep the secure, our lot secure? Because obviously there's gonna be a lot of pedestrian traffic going through there from the parking lot to cut through. And I was wondering if that's on the docket, or if that's something we can discuss, just to make sure our properties are secure as much as possible from that huge parking lot. Cause, I was young once and I remember what kids did in parking lots, and I just wanna make sure that our yards and our properties are secure from the bad elements out there.
We would have liked to make the parking lot closer to the building, but the 119 spaces are what's required for our project. And the people that are, basically, an eighth or quarter mile away are gonna come running in the winter towards the building to get in. So we don't think we're gonna see too many pedestrians going towards Bellevue. But I don't know if we really need to put a plan in action to prevent people cutting through Bellevue. I mean, I think people are gonna park their vehicle and they're gonna head towards the building, because they're gonna be people that live there or are visiting. So we didn't really think that that was gonna be a concern, but we heard what you said, and if you have anything specific that you think we should do, then we're glad to entertain.
Okay, I was speaking to the residents that live there, I'm speaking about straight traffic, people, transient people, it's gonna be a cut through from the school where it's dark at night, and they can just cut through that parking lot if they get around, or if they come in from George Street, jump the chain link fence just to escape some other situation they're in. Just trying to keep my family and my neighbors as safe as possible, that's all. Thank you for your time, thank you for answering my questions.
Agreed, and I believe that maybe an agreement can come out of this, that possibly Joe and Carl would be open to modifying slightly these plans if it becomes a problem. Would Joe and Carl be willing to make it more difficult for random pedestrians to be able to access properties by building a fence along that access route? I don't know the answer. Maybe they know the answer. But it's something that we can certainly discuss about for future. If it's a problem, then maybe it's something that can be addressed later. Possibly. So if anybody else has anything to say about the appeal or the application, please speak now, otherwise we will move on.
There does not appear to be anybody else in the room here interested in speaking, and the folks online are not, have not indicated they want to say anything either.
Okay, so we will discuss this in deliberative session after we get through the next three agenda items. So thank you so much, everybody who has spoken about the appeal and about the application. We will move on to city updates, and I will let Eric take this portion.
Matt, before you close this hearing, it might be worthwhile to make sure that the exhibits are deemed admitted in the hearing so that they're part of the record from the exhibit list. I don't know if you have the exhibit list. Eric, I'm sure Eric does.
Yeah.
Yep, Eric sent the exhibit list earlier today, and
Thank you again for listening to us. Eric, thank you.
thank you. I will. So yeah, Eric, what is this something we do now, or I was planning on just putting down?
Why don't we take a brief pause to let folks clear the room here as they're clearing, so that everybody can hear what's going on, and then we can pick up again.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
I'll be right back. we need to keep going with our meeting, so if you're welcome to chat, but I'm gonna have to ask you to not do it right here in the office. Okay, so the exhibits for tonight's meeting. I'll just read the exhibit, the letter, and a quick synopsis of the exhibit so it is entered into the record formally. You should have all gotten a copy of the exhibit list via email from me today. So Exhibit A is the zoning permit application with the civil plan set, the architectural plan set, and the elevations and materials. Exhibit B is the project review committee agenda from 12/13/2021, where this application was heard. Exhibit C is the notice to the adjacent property owners for the project review committee meeting that was sent out on 11/23/2021. Exhibit D is the list of persons that received that notice of the project review committee meeting. Exhibit E is the certificate of conformity that was issued for the project, dated 12/16/2021. Exhibit F is the property posting for the intent to issue a zoning permit that was posted on 12/16/2021, including a date by which appeals needed to be submitted. Exhibit G is photos of the property posting. Exhibit H is the notice of appeal to the decision of the zoning administrator, dated 12/30/2021. Exhibit I is the notice of the public hearing that was posted on the properties for on 1/25/2022 for tonight's hearing. Exhibit J are photos of that public hearing notice posted on the properties. Exhibit K is the public hearing notice for the Development Review Board meeting on the appeal. Exhibit L is proof of publication of that hearing notice at the Burlington Free Press that was run on 1/29/2022. Exhibit M is the memorandum to the adjacent property owners dated 1/24/2022, notifying them of the hearing tonight. Exhibit N is the list of persons that received that memo. Exhibit O will be tonight's meeting agenda. Exhibit P is the memorandum memorandum to the Development Review Board dated 2/17/2021, providing information on the actions that led to the issuance of the certificate of conformity and the appeal. Exhibit Q is the updated civil plan set that was submitted on 2/9/2022. Exhibit R will be the sign-in sheet for tonight's meeting for the folks that were here in attendance and also the folks that attended online. Adding to that, Exhibit S will be the photographs that were presented by the applicant tonight. And then my intent is Exhibit T to produce the letter that was referenced by Mr. Myers, indicating the information that he had sent to me about an appeal as well. I believe what he had sent was, as I understood it, he was appealing the project as well, but it was not a formal submission of an appeal as is outlined in our regulations. So I did not include that. However, I will locate that and include that as an exhibit, as Exhibit T for this hearing. And those are the exhibits that we have for this application.
Does that alter anything, that last piece that you just said there?
I don't believe so. I think it's basically he presented the same testimony that he included in the written statement. He is on the record in either case.
Great.
At the end of the day, it confirms his standing as an interested party in this matter.
Excellent. Before we finish, I don't know if we're allowed to still do this because everyone left, but are there other outstanding issues with this project that we should know about?
So the appeal was issued. So let me back up a step. The project went through the project review committee. The certificate of conformity was issued, which outlines the conditions necessary to, the conditions needed to be met in order for a zoning permit to be issued. Typically what happens is once the certificate of conformity is issued, the appeal period will start. The decision is made, the appeal period begins, which is what is appealable, the decision of the zoning administrator. And generally speaking, the applicant will wait until that appeal period ends before they start to address any of the conditions.
Okay.
So in this case, however, the applicant has begun addressing the conditions, one of which is referenced tonight, with the screening and the fencing against the adjacent property owners. So there's still conditions they need to meet that they're willing to meet.
Are those appealable?
At this point, they are not, because the appeal period has ended.
Mm-hmm.
So unless an appeal was submitted within that 15-day window after the property was posted on December 16th, this will be the only appeal that's heard on this matter by this board.
Yeah. What if those conditions aren't satisfactory? You have the lone decision on whether they
if the conditions are not met, then they will not be issued their permit.
And there's no ambiguity about whether they are met or not. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, based on the conditions, I don't believe there are.
Okay.
I can share my screen here with the...
I'm not trying to be difficult.
No, that's fine. Understood. Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen again and show you the certificate of conformity. I believe I thought I included that with the agenda, but I may not have.
I think it's in here, yeah.
But so the certificate of conformity, it's pretty straightforward as to what is needed, generally speaking. So providing certification of the affordable housing to meet the standards, complete a fee in lieu agreement on street trees, update the architectural plans for any mechanical systems to make sure they're in compliance with section 608. Specific to what was discussed tonight, a comment from emergency services on the secondary access. So once those items are addressed by the applicant, that'll be reviewed by the emergency services to make sure those meet their standards. Just some delineations on the site plans and other specific items. The item 7 here is what is basically under appeal tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Traffic impact study, they've prepared one and is under review right now by our staff. The comment about the rodents is actually included in here under other comments. Item 1, specifically the health officer requested that they mitigate and provide documentation of that before issuing demolition permits. That will be through a separate process. The demolition is not covered under this zoning. That is a separate application. So this comment, that's why it's under the other comments that are identified for consideration, because the health officer basically stated at that meeting that they will not issue a demolition permit unless they see that documentation.
Yep.
So that's just reiterating their concerns. So generally that is what we include as those are the conditions that they would need to meet. These first 11 items that are listed here.
And Eric, do you consider that number 7 or 6 or both of them to have been met at this point based on those updated plans?
I would need to see a little more information on I believe on the plantings, but I think based on what I've seen as far as the fencing, it has been met. The fence part is there, so that meets at least that component of the neighborhood matters. I haven't looked in a lot of detail at the planting schedule and where the rest of the actual neighborhood matters areas are on the properties to confirm that, but I think it does meet that standard.
Now, number 8, you could find that unsatisfactory and they could appeal that, similar to that Dunkin' Donuts, right?
That is correct, yes. That's correct.
That would be an appeal by the applicant, not an interested party.
That's correct. And similarly, the way that happened with the Dunkin' Donuts is there was a condition that was not met,
right,
which led to the denial. So that was a change of decision in essence.
Yeah.
It was originally a approval with conditions that then was reversed to a denial when they were unable to meet the conditions.
Right.
So anyway, that's...
Okay, sorry to go off on that tangent.
No problem. Good question. But yes, item 7 is specifically what is under appeal tonight.
I guess that means we're done. I'm sorry, Matt.
No, that's all right.
We are done with the
Hearing.
evidence.
Correct. The hearing has been closed, as best I can tell.
We are ready for city updates.
Yes, we are. And Eric can provide the city updates.
I have no specific updates to provide tonight. Unless there's any questions that you all have, I'll be happy to answer those, but otherwise I have nothing specific.
Okay. And item number 7 is other business.
The next potential meeting we will have is on March 17th for the DRB. Tomorrow is the deadline to make it onto that agenda. So far, I have not received anything, so if we don't get anything in tomorrow, then there will be no hearings for us for that meeting, and most likely we will not have a meeting. So anyway, but that will be our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Awesome. So that is the last agenda item. The next is adjournment, to adjourn. And I believe if everybody's open to it, it's 8 o'clock now. Deliberative session can happen tonight in a fairly timely fashion if everybody's okay with that. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
By Harland. Any second?
I'll second.
Elsie seconds. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Looks like hands raised. Unanimous. We are officially adjourned.